Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the InvestPal podcast. Today's guest, Cary Carbonaro. Cary is an award-winning certified financial planner with over 25 years of experience, currently serving as the managing wealth advisor and woman and wealth ambassador for Ashton Thomas. She currently leads a multi-million dollar financial planning practice specializing in empowering women to overcome their financial challenges and also increase their financial literacy. You have a very extensive career with leadership roles at ACM, Goldman, where she was the vice president and head of office, and also at United Capital, where you founded the Women's Leadership Division. Cary, very extensive background. It was a mouthful for me to get through. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So maybe to kick things off, because I know you love to talk about women in finance, and I think, one thing that I hold very, very near and dear is helping boost financial literacy. Curious if you could tell us a bit about your background on getting into the finance industry.
Sure. So this is a fun one for me. So I was the oldest out of my family, and my dad had all daughters. And then I was the oldest, and we bonded over money instead of sports. So I used to do take your daughter to work day with him before there was a take your daughter to work day. Like, I think it came around in the 80s or 90s. I'm not even sure, but he used to take me to work before that. Like, there wasn't an official take your daughter to work day, but I used to go with him to work. And he worked for JP Morgan Chase in the banking industry. And so he taught me everything about financial literacy at a young age and my whole life. And I just thought people knew this. I didn't know that people didn't know it. It was just something that was second nature to me. And he took me to foreclosure auctions, and we went to personal finance speeches. We did Straight Talk with the Dolans, which is, really a really long from the 80s when I was like, I don't know, a teenager. So I always knew that I wanted to be in this industry and help people with money. I didn't actually know that CFP or to be a certified financial planner was actually a thing or a career, because it was very early stages when I got involved in this. And so I couldn't believe that I could. So I started my first in banking right out of college. I was in the management training program at JP Morgan Chase. And then I got my CFP and realized I can help clients one-on-one and get paid to do that. And I was doing it when I was in college for free for all my friends, because I was doing their budgets and I was doing their calculations and showing them how to find money in their budgets. And I was like, wow, I could actually get paid to do this and people will pay me. And so anyway, it was the greatest thing in the world. So I always knew I wanted to do it. And I always knew I wanted to work with people and help them with money. And I always knew I wanted to help women specifically because when I was in college, I started a sorority at upstate New York in Cortland. And I went to make women feel safe being away from home. And I believe that women don't necessarily talk about money, and it's not something that we talk about regularly. And it's not something that there's not a lot of women advisors. We're about 20% versus 80% men. I wanted to be a light for women and an advocate for women to make them equal with men when it comes to money, because I do believe that whoever has the money in the power dynamic in a relationship, usually it's not equal. And so if somebody can be financially literate and financially knowledgeable and have financial freedom, then they can really make all the choices in their lives themselves and not make it because they're trapped in a bad marriage or trapped in anything that they don't want to be in. It's all about the choices that they make.
I want to come back to that, but on a previous point, you mentioned you started off at JP Morgan in the 80s and 90s, and you look back to like a movie like Wolf of Wall Street and how like that bro culture formed. I'm curious, like, what was your growing up in that industry where it was like, and it still is super male dominated? What was the environment like for you starting your career out with?
Well, so I actually started in 1990. God, don't make me any older. But
2000s.
I grew up in the 80s and graduated high school in the 80s. And so yeah, so I don't know if you remember, so first of all, Wolf of Wall Street happened on Long Island, which is where I'm from. So that I had an ex-boyfriend that worked there. Like this was like a very big part of our culture. We also had the Smith Barney Boom Boom Room. I don't know if you remember that one or heard of that one. It's in my next book, but that's one of the lawsuits also took place in Long Island, in my backyard. So this was so common, this craziness of what was happening. And back in the day when I also worked for a mutual fund firm. And I remember going out I mean, crazy stuff that used to happen. But, you know, I don't even know if I can talk about it. Some of the stuff that happened. But you had to be, if you were going to be a woman in this industry, you had to have pretty thick skin to be able to stomach what was going on. And it's funny because I didn't even realize that it was, not normal because it was the only thing I knew. I only knew this is the way it was. It was bro culture. It was like that. And you just did it and went along with it, or you didn't have a job. So, I didn't even realize that it was like not normal until probably around, I think it was like 2000. And I was like walking into a meeting I think it was a TD Ameritrade conference. And there was like a line at the men's bathroom. And I just like walked into the women's bathroom and I'm like, oh my God, there's like no women here. And like, cause it's usually the other way around. Everywhere you go, the line is out the door in the women's and the men's bathroom is everybody just walks in. So it was complete opposite. And it just like struck me. And I was like so many years into the industry and I was like, wow, where are all the women? I didn't even like realize it. And then I started to like wake up and see what was going on. And then I started to study some of the lawsuits and some of those things. And it's all in my next book about it. It's called Bro Culture and Lawsuits. Also, I talk about the lawsuit with Goldman Sachs, which was a multi-year class action lawsuit where women who were in positions of where they could affect revenue. So it was for revenue generators women who were capped at a VP level because they couldn't move up.
Really?
That was the class action lawsuit that was going on. And they actually settled out of court for $50,000 per employee. And there was thousands of women in this lawsuit. So 50,000 per employee is really nothing. It's almost like a 1 month salary for some people. So it was really not, it was not even really a slap on the wrist, and they admitted no wrongdoing. So it really was not a great outcome, in my opinion, to the lawsuit. And I was actually part of it. And unfortunately, I was going to donate the whole 50,000 to a women's charity, and I actually wound up finding out that getting an email from the attorney saying United Capital employees were specifically excluded from the lawsuit, so you're getting nothing. And I was like, okay, so then I'm not donating my money, even though I was in the lawsuit. I didn't get anything.
Why
So
did leave United out?
I have no idea. I honestly don't know. I don't know if all affiliates or people that because I was not hired by Goldman. I was hired by United Capital and then bought by Goldman. So maybe anybody who was in one of those positions where they bought the company was left out. I'm not really sure. I don't really, and I never will probably know the details.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
So have you noticed, from the 90s, early 2000s to today, a shift in the industry as it pertains to bro culture? Is it very pervasive? I'm obviously speaking as a guy here, but have you noticed a shift with women in the financial workforce and
Um,
how we interact?
So it is a tiny, tiny, tiny bit better, like a milliliter better, like just a little bit better. But it really depends honestly, it depends on the company and it depends on the culture of that company. I don't believe that some companies have changed at all. And then I believe that some companies are doing a great job. So it really depends on the culture and it comes from the top. And I also feel like women, I've had this conversation with a lot of women. Women do much better in RIA settings, which is registered investment advisory firms, versus big banks or big brokerage firms, or because those are harder to penetrate. And I think the RIAs are just a lot easier for women to work at. If you ask me one or the other, I would 100% say go to an RIA.
Do you think that's because the RA industry is a bit more nascent and there hasn't been that long established culture yet versus like at a bulge?
I believe so. I believe so. And also, I just feel like the RIA culture is a little bit more female friendly. It's your fiduciaries. In a lot of cases, your fee only. Not that the matter of how you charge makes a difference. It's just a matter of, it hasn't been, yes, it hasn't been around for, 100 years, practicing it one way and doing things one way. It's kind of a new industry, and even CFP is a new industry, only around 50 something years. So we don't have the ingrained, I guess, bro culture. So it makes it a lot easier for women to thrive in that environment.
Interesting. So on this new book that's coming out, could you talk a little bit about what you're covering off with it? I know it's coming out, what, in, you said, was it a couple months?
April 29th
April.
of 2025. Yep. So it's called Women in Wealth, a playbook to empower clients and unlock their fortune. Originally, and it's published by Wiley. Originally, my title was Compel Her, Don't Sell Her. But they actually did not like the word compel. They thought it was a negative word, and I thought it was a positive word, but they won, and we changed it to that. But it's almost like I would have also maybe want to call it the future of women in wealth. But the book is written for people who work with women and who want to understand how to work with women and why women are different. The greatest wealth transfer in our history is coming up. By 2030, women will control 2/3 of the nation's wealth. By 2048, women will control 48 trillion. So it's 30 trillion by 2030 and 48 trillion by 2048. This is like a massive, I mean, not million, not billion, trillion with a T. So, I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. And I always say, what industry would you tell them you've got $1 trillion opportunity staring right in front of you, and they're not making any changes to meet this incredible challenge? So women have not been served well from the wealth management industry as a whole in general. And the reason we know that is because depending on which stat and study you look at, who spouse dies are going to leave that advisor 70 to 90% of the time. So, some are say 70, some say 90%, some don't, so we'll split the difference and say 80% of the time they're leaving the advisor because the advisor doesn't talk to them, doesn't understand them, they don't trust them, they don't communicate with them well. So women are very different than men, especially when it comes to money and especially when it comes to wealth management and planning. There's so many different things that we can do to affect change to make women feel comfortable. And the industry is really not doing it because they've always done it. It's okay. It's not their fault. They don't even know what they don't know. It's set up by men for men. It's always been done this way. It's always worked. So I think it's going to have to change. And I'm hoping that this book is really going to make a dent in how women are treated in the industry. And it's interesting because I not only talk about female clients, I also talk about female employees. And so there's, a lot of different chapters on how to bring more women into the profession and what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and all of that stuff. A lot of action items.
So I don't want to spoil the book for everyone, but what would be some of the key differences on how a woman thinks about finance versus like the traditional dealing with like men?
So women, first of all, take longer than men. Okay. So it's not going to be like a one and done meeting and then you're done. Like women need it's a longer sales cycle with women, first of all. Second of all, there's no stupid questions, right? So women want to discuss it. They want collaboration. They want to be comfortable with their decision makings. And so it's not, it's a very different sales cycle. Women want to be communicated to differently as well. So one of the things I like to talk about is like analogies. You know, a lot of men use the sport analogies and, you know, beating the S&P 500 because they want to kill it and beat it. And, you know, that doesn't resonate with women at all. Women want to know that they're going to be okay. They're going to not outlive their money. They're going to be able to provide for their kids. They're going to be able to have, you know, live comfortably. They're going to be able to have a, you know, maybe a second house or whatever their goals are, you know, whatever they want it discussed in goals and life choices rather than numbers. And, the other thing I talk about is with women, when we talk about for example, I talk about asset classes, and you know, women really don't necessarily understand asset classes in general. You know, it's their eyes start to glaze over, and they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So I actually wrote an article, very female friendly, to appeal to women, and I compared shoes to asset classes, and women get it and love it. And people, I remember one of my friends who I gave it to said, why didn't anybody ever tell me this? Why didn't anybody ever explain it to me this way? I totally get this. And she's somebody who doesn't understand money at all. And she was like, this makes perfect sense to me. And I said, great. And it's funny because when I give it to guys to read, they say, I learned about shoes. So it's just a matter of tweaking the communication so that it's, you know, about, and also the other thing is women want to feel empathy and trust and collaboration. It's very different experience for a woman than a man when it comes to, and also money, you know, for everybody is such an emotional thing, right? We're completely tied emotionally to our money. And how you relate to that with that client is incredibly important. So I think also, you know, with women, they feel they may also get tied emotionally to a house or to a thing or to a 401k or to a stock. You just something, you know, my ex-husband or my husband who passed away worked for that company. I can't sell that stock. And then you have to, you know, explain why, or I can't sell that house because he was here with me and I'm too emotionally attached to it. I had a client who the house was killing her. Like the price of the house was killing her. Like, and she was eroding her assets, you know, daily. And we went on like this for, I think it was at least 2 years. And every meeting we had, I said, you're going to run out of money if we don't sell this house. And it was just, I had to keep showing her these charts and going in, you know, explaining why I was so concerned about it. One time I called her and I said, I'm losing sleep in the middle of the night for you because I'm afraid you're going to run out of money. Like, and she was like, okay, I get it. I hear you. I will make a change. But I mean, I think it probably took 3 years, and now she's perfectly fine and great and never going to I never worry about her anymore. I'm never going to have that conversation. But I was very, very worried at the time for her. So like things like that.
Okay. And so I have chatted with a few women in this industry. One that I thought was very interesting, where she's more of like a financial coach. So she's not a registered advisor, but she's created this community because she noticed that women talk about it amongst their social circles, and she's creating that environment. Do you think there's a role around like community to be had on like
Yes,
educating women?
100%. 100%. Women feel safer talking to other women about when, like, so I do women events, and people are like, why don't you invite the men to it? And I'm like, because women feel more comfortable if it's just women. So when you create the women circles, or you know, the trust circles or the honest conversation circles, or the, you know, any type of group atmosphere where we can talk about money in a group, we can feel comfortable. I mean, I could do it one-on-one too, but it's even better when it's in a group. It's because then you know, somebody might ask a question that you were afraid to ask, and then you're learning from the group as well. And it's a safe space, and I think I'm a huge fan of that.
So with that, what do you think the future? Like I'm an advisor getting into this space, and I'm trying to build my practice up. Do you have some advice for that sort of advisor, both man or woman on how they could better relate and build their practice up with women in mind?
Yeah. So, first of all, read my book. It will be out. It will be out soon. I already have everything ready for you. It's so funny because it's very action oriented, and I go through chapter by chapter, and I actually put in there questions to ask your clients, questions to ask yourself as an advisor on every single chapter. Now, the basis for my book, which I actually haven't even talked about, was a study by McKinsey that said the future of wealth management is women. And that is the story that's showing all the future clients of wealth management will be women, like more women than men. So it's going to flip flop and reverse of what it's been for since the wealth management industry came into existence. So things are 100% going to change. But what's interesting is what I try to tell people with women also is you have to be yourself, and you have to be authentic, and you have to be truthful, and you have to be um you can't fake it till you make it, or try to be something that you're not, or because women I feel like they'll see right through you, and they'll know that you're not truthful or authentic, or um you know they need to feel confident in their decision making. They trust their gut. They're going to go with how you make them feel. And unfortunately, sometimes with how you make them feel, if you're a good salesperson, you might even be fooling them. But they usually can figure out if they feel like they're getting not the right answers, or they're not getting spoken to, or they're not getting um, eye contact, or they're not getting the analogies. If you're talking in jargon, if you're talking in terms that you talk to the men about, you literally have to change the way you're speaking to your client, because it's two totally different communication styles.
Interesting. So, what do you think firms could do better to recruit more women in finance and make this like an interesting career path for them, like the career you've had?
So it's hard. Um, well, I think that they need to. One of the things we had a while ago, we had a CFP campaign where you need to see it to be it. And so to hold the women up that have done it. And I think that we're doing that. I think the industry is definitely doing that now. Investment News had Women to Watch, which started in, I guess, with Suzanne Syracuse in 2015, I think. And they, holding up the women leaders who are actually doing it, and showing people who are doing it. There's Invest in Women, which is a great conference. There's really some really specific women niche conferences where and companies who are holding out the women who are doing it. I know Investment News is also doing a new $100,000 club for women. Not 100,000, sorry, $100 million club for women, that you're managing at least $100 million in assets, which means you've made it, so to speak. And they're doing that, and they're going to put a list together of all those women. I think that's great, because it's actually, I had this conversation on my CFP board trip. It's harder for women to actually get clients than men. Um, I believe it's harder because there's conscious bias and unconscious bias always at play. I have a chapter on that in my book. You'd be surprised at what's in there. And what's interesting is I even had a client who was a woman of mine refer me to one of her friends who's a woman. And she said, there's no way I'm working with her. She's a woman. A man can take care of me better than a woman can
Really?
with my money. So there you go. So that's why I think it's harder for women to get clients, because of unconscious bias that's there all the time. And there's also fewer of us. So
Where do you think the starting off point should it be? Should it be like a college thing where the CFP is coming in and educating finance classes about the industry, or like in your case, you brought up at the beginning of this conversation, your dad is the one who taught you, and like the role like a parent can play in helping instill that confidence or that knowledge that this is a viable path in the future for his daughters.
well, I think it's all of the above. I think it's the CFP board is doing a ton of stuff on this. They have a whole nonprofit arm called the Center for Financial Planning, which has an arm to go out to the um, younger people and the schools and the high schools and colleges and stuff. We did a Girl Scout event where we reached girls from age 5 through 18. We went to the National Girl Scout Conference, and we had signs that said future CFP, like little selfie sticks and tattoos, and we told them about the profession, and they played a game to get them to retirement. None of them, I mean, I think there was two people that knew what it was because their fathers were CFPs, that were there. And other than that, not one person knew what a CFP was. And it's interesting because they know what an attorney is. They know what a CPA is. They don't know what a CFP is. It's just, we're not there yet. We're working on it. And I think we're doing a great job. That So financial planning is a great profession. It's a great profession for women, and it's not all just, there's a lot of different paths, career paths. So the whole workforce development, you don't have to be a rainmaker, the ones going out getting the clients, which is the most difficult position, to be in, which is actually what I choose to be in. But you could be a support person. You could be a teacher. You could be in fintech. You could be in compliance. I mean, there's a million different ways to go. You don't have to just be the person bringing in the clients. That's the hardest job, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. So I know we're almost at time here, and I think everyone should check out this book. I think I'm going to get myself a copy. You mentioned it's available for pre-sale. Where can people find your new book, Women in Wealth?
So if you go to carycarbonaro.com and you click on my books, I've got a full page with Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the places you could buy it, and you can just click on those links right there.
Perfect. We'll leave a link to the show notes as well. Cary, thank you so much for coming on today. I feel like I've learned a lot, especially on how I deal with folks in the industry as well. So I really appreciate the time. Anyone interested, we will leave a link to Cary's website in our show notes. Cary, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Cameron.